This is 1 hour of facts about the Crusades in a soothing voice that studies have scientifically proven to put you to sleep faster because it makes you feel safer and more relaxed. Let's jump into it after you hit like and subscribe so you and others see these videos again. It really helps. Let me know what topic I should put you to sleep with next time. Alright, relax and take a deep breath. The Crusades were a series of religious wars sanctioned by the Latin Church in the medieval period, primarily to recover the Holy Land from Islamic rule. One lesser-known aspect of the Crusades is the Children's Crusade, which occurred in the year 1212. This event was not an official crusade endorsed by the Church, but rather a popular movement led by a young French shepherd named Stephen of Cloyes. Thousands of children and adolescents banded together with the intent of peacefully converting Muslims in the Holy Land to Christianity. However, the crusade ended in disaster as many of the children were sold into slavery or died from disease and starvation before even reaching their destination. It's often overlooked that the Crusades had a significant impact on the medieval economy. One key example is the development of the Italian maritime republics of Venice, Genoa, and Pisa. These city-states capitalized on the need for transportation and supplies for the crusading armies by establishing lucrative trade routes between the East and West. They also gained control of valuable ports and territories in the eastern Mediterranean. The wealth generated from these ventures played a crucial role in the economic expansion of medieval Europe and laid the groundwork for the Renaissance. Centuries later, though commonly perceived as conflicts between Christians and Muslims, the Crusades also featured significant internal strife among Christian factions. During the Fourth Crusade, for instance, Crusaders deviated from their mission to reclaim Jerusalem, and instead sacked the Christian city of Constantinople in the year 1204. This attack severely weakened the Byzantine Empire and strained relations between Western European and Eastern Orthodox Christians, which had already been tense since the Great Schism of the 11th century. The conquest of Constantinople led to the establishment of the Latin Empire, which lasted until 1261, but left a legacy of distrust and enmity between the two branches of Christianity. In terms of technology and science, the Crusades acted as a conduit for the transfer of knowledge between the Muslim world and Europe. While most people know about the cultural exchanges in broad terms, the specific case of surgical techniques is fascinating. European crusaders observed and learned advanced medical practices from Arab physicians. One noteworthy figure was the famed surgeon al-Zahrawi, whose works introduced European doctors to techniques like the use of catgut for internal stitching and the systematic treatment of fractures. European medical texts from this period began to incorporate these advanced methods, significantly improving medicinal practices back home. The role of women in the Crusades is another underexplored aspect. While medieval warfare was predominantly male, women played various critical roles. Eleanor of Aquitaine, a notable example, accompanied her husband King Louis VII of France on the Second Crusade. Despite the difficult and dangerous conditions, she not only managed to lead but also rallied support, showing remarkable political acumen. Women who stayed behind also took on responsibilities such as managing estates and sometimes even defending them. Additionally, some noble women provided crucial financial support, funding military campaigns and the construction of fortifications. Though the primary aim of the Crusades was to control the Holy Land, they inadvertently led to the growth of powerful military orders. One of the most famous is the Knights Templar, established in 1119. Beginning as a group of knights who vowed to protect Christian pilgrims, they grew into a wealthy and powerful organization. They became so wealthy and influential that they set up early forms of banking, allowing pilgrims to deposit money in one location and withdraw it from another. Despite their significant contributions to the Crusades, they were disbanded in the early 14th century under dubious charges of heresy. One of the less commonly known crusades is the Baltic Crusades, which occurred primarily in the 12th and 13th centuries. These crusades were aimed at converting the pagan societies of the Baltic region to Christianity. The Teutonic Knights, another significant military order, played a pivotal role in this effort. They fought against various Baltic tribes and established a monastic state in Prussia. Unlike the Crusades in the Holy Land, these campaigns had enduring success, leading to the Christianization of the region and the establishment of powerful Christian states in the Baltic Sea area, profoundly affecting the area's ethnic and cultural composition. Language also underwent fascinating changes due to the Crusades. The mingling of different people led to the borrowing of words from Arabic into European languages. Terms like sugar, cotton, hazard, and sofa entered European lexicons through interactions with the Muslim world. This linguistic exchange extended to various fields such as astronomy, mathematics, and even cuisine. European knights and travelers brought back spices, fruits, and cooking methods that enriched European diets and culinary practices. The infusion of these words and goods had lasting effects, illustrating how interconnected the medieval world had become due to the Crusades. The siege tactics and fortifications employed during the Crusades showcased a combination of Western and Eastern influences. The Crusaders encountered formidable Muslim fortresses that were well designed to withstand sieges. In response, they learned from these designs and incorporated these ideas into their own castles back home. For example, concentric castle designs, which featured multiple layers of defensive walls, became popular in Europe after being observed in the Holy Land. Siege engines like trebuchets and mangonels were also refined and widely used due to the experiences of the Crusaders, enhancing European military engineering significantly. In 12th century Europe, the notion of pilgrimage was deeply embedded in Christian religious practice. However, the Crusades transformed this idea from a peaceful journey to a militarized movement. Participants were offered indulgences or spiritual rewards for taking up the cross and fighting in the Holy Land. This religious motivation was so strong that even criminals saw an opportunity for redemption. Pope Urban II, who called for the First Crusade in 1095, proclaimed that those who joined would receive forgiveness for their sins. This promise attracted a diverse group of people, from peasants to nobles, all unified by the hope of spiritual and temporal gains. Trade during the Crusades wasn't just confined to small goods, it also involved intellectual exchanges. The Muslim world was more scientifically advanced at this time, particularly in fields such as astronomy, medicine, and mathematics. European scholars took advantage of this by translating seminal Arabic texts into Latin. One noteworthy figure was Gerard of Cremona, who translated numerous works of Arabic science into Latin during the 12th century. These translations played a vital role in the eventual rise of European universities and the scientific revolution. They helped reintroduce lost classical knowledge to the West, thus reigniting the flame of learning in Europe. The Crusades were also an arena for the clash of different military strategies and tactics. Muslim armies often utilized light cavalry, known as mounted archers, who excelled in mobility and strategic retreats. In contrast, European knights relied heavily on heavily armored cavalry charges to break enemy lines. The fascinating story of the Battle of Hattin in 1187 illustrates this difference. Saladin, the Muslim leader, lured the Crusader forces into a waterless, arid environment. Using hit-and-run tactics, his forces exhausted and outmaneuvered the heavily armored Crusaders. The result was a decisive Muslim victory, leading to the recapture of Jerusalem and significantly altering the balance of power in the region. Religious relics took on heightened significance during the Crusades. Crusaders brought back numerous relics, including what was believed to be pieces of the true cross and other holy artifacts. These relics were often enshrined in lavish monuments and churches back in Europe, enhancing the spiritual and political influence of the regions that possessed them. One famous example is the Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, built by King Louis IX to house the crown of thorns. These relics attracted pilgrims, boosting local economies and reinforcing the sanctity and legitimacy of the Crusaders' endeavors in the eyes of European Christians. Although the Crusades are often framed within the context of religious warfare, economic and political factors were also at play. For many European nobles, the Crusades offered an opportunity to gain land, wealth, and status. Younger sons who were unlikely to inherit family estates saw the Holy Land as an opportunity for social advancement. The promise of land and plunder attracted ambitious knights looking to improve their fortunes. Likewise, kings and nobles used participation in the Crusades as a way to assert their authority and gain influence over rival lords. This mixture of religious fervor and worldly ambition made the Crusades a complex and multifaceted series of events. The Crusades had lasting consequences for European art and architecture. The returning Crusaders brought back not only spoils of war, but also artistic influences from the Islamic world. These influences were evident in the adoption of intricate geometric patterns, elaborate tile work, and detailed metalwork. Gothic architecture, which developed in the 12th century, was partly inspired by the Islamic architectural styles encountered during the Crusades. This cross-cultural exchange enriched the European artistic tradition, resulting in more elaborate and diverse forms of expression in churches, cathedrals, and other public buildings. One of the more infamous aspects of the Crusades was the establishment of the so-called Crusader states, a series of feudal territories carved out by European nobles in the Levant. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Tripoli were among the most notable. These states were constantly under threat from surrounding Muslim powers and had to rely heavily on reinforcements and supplies from Europe. The Crusader states acted almost like colonial outposts, introducing European feudal systems and customs to the region. However, their existence was precarious, and they eventually fell one by one, culminating in the fall of Acre in 1291, which marked the end of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. The economic impact of the Crusades extended beyond mere trade routes and the exchange of goods. European economies saw the introduction of new agricultural products such as rice, apricots, and sesame seeds. The concept of plantation agriculture, observed in the Levant, was brought back to Europe, influencing agricultural practices. Additionally, European markets opened up to luxury items such as silks, spices, and precious gems, which had previously been rare or unknown. These new goods and agricultural methods contributed to the gradual shift from a predominantly feudal economy to a more market-oriented one, setting the stage for the economic transformations of the late Middle Ages. One often overlooked group that played a significant role during the Crusades were the Armenians, located in a strategically important region between the Crusader states and Muslim territories. Armenians often found themselves acting as intermediaries. They provided crucial support by offering provisions, reinforcements, and logistical aid to the crusading armies. In return, they hoped to secure protection and assistance against their own enemies. The Armenian Kingdom of Cilicia, for example, served as a valuable ally to the Crusaders, participating in military campaigns and facilitating diplomacy. Their involvement underscores the complex and multifaceted nature of alliances during the Crusades. The role of maritime power in the Crusades cannot be overstated. Control of the Mediterranean Sea was crucial for supplying Crusader states and conducting military operations. The city-state of Venice played a particularly pivotal role. The Venetians negotiated lucrative agreements that allowed them to control significant portions of trade routes and port cities. A notable example was the Treaty of Venice in 1201, which provided the Crusaders with ships in exchange for economic and territorial concessions. These arrangements significantly enriched Venice, transforming it into a dominant maritime power and enabling it to exert considerable influence over European and Mediterranean affairs for centuries. During the Third Crusade, which took place from 1189 to 1192, two opposing leaders emerged who would become legendary figures in history: Richard the Lionheart and Saladin. Despite being adversaries, both were renowned for their chivalry and military prowess. There is a fascinating story of mutual respect between the two. At one point, Richard fell ill and Saladin, demonstrating great honor, sent his personal physician and a gift of fruit to aid in his recovery. Although they fought fiercely, they eventually negotiated a truce that allowed Christians to maintain a presence in Jerusalem, highlighting the complexity of relations between these two iconic figures. While the Crusades are often associated with large-scale battles and epic sieges, guerrilla warfare also played a significant role. Muslim forces, most notably the Hashashin or assassins, used guerrilla tactics to their advantage. Operating in small, highly mobile units, they targeted high-ranking Crusader leaders and strongholds. One famous incident involved the assassination of Conrad of Montferrat in 1292, just days before he was to be crowned King of Jerusalem. This type of asymmetrical warfare wreaked havoc on Crusader plans and forced them to be constantly vigilant, showing that the Crusades were not solely about conventional warfare. The concept of chivalry evolved significantly through the Crusades. Initially, chivalry was more about martial prowess and loyalty to one's feudal lord. However, exposure to the Islamic concept of futuwa, which emphasized virtues like courage, justice, and hospitality, led to a broader understanding of noble conduct. Contact with Muslim soldiers who often exhibited courage and honor in battle also influenced the European knights. As a result, the code of chivalry began to incorporate elements of martial valor, religious piety, and courtly behavior. This transformation had a lasting impact on European society, influencing literature, behavior, and the very notion of knighthood. The Crusades were also responsible for unintended consequences back in Europe. The vast resources required to fund these military campaigns led to the unprecedented taxation of both the nobility and commoners. Monarchs like King Richard the Lionheart instituted taxes like the Saladin tithe to fund the Third Crusade. This need for funds transformed the relationship between rulers and their subjects, paving the way for the development of more structured forms of governance and bureaucracy. The financial demands of the Crusades also led to greater transparency and accountability in the collection and allocation of public funds, indirectly laying groundwork for the modern state. While the Crusades mainly focused on the Holy Land, they also led to conflicts in other regions such as Spain. Known as the Reconquista, these battles aimed to reclaim Iberian territories from Muslim rule. One fascinating story involves the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212, where a coalition of Christian forces from various Spanish kingdoms achieved a decisive victory against the Almohad Caliphate. This battle was a turning point that significantly accelerated the Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula. It showcases how the spirit and tactics of the Crusades also influenced other theaters of conflict between Christians and Muslims. Cultural and intellectual exchanges during the Crusades were not one-way streets. They had lasting effects on the Muslim world as well. European crusaders brought with them their own technological innovations, such as better forms of armor and fortification techniques, which Muslim armies adopted and refined. There was also an exchange in the arts, particularly in metallurgy and tapestry. Muslim craftsmen began to incorporate elements of European design into their works. This cross-pollination of ideas enriched both civilizations, showing that even in conflict, there can be mutual influence and learning. The Crusades were transformative, not just for Europe but for the broader medieval world. The crusading zeal even extended to intra-European conflicts. One stark example is the Albigensian Crusade, launched in 1209 by Pope Innocent III. This crusade targeted the Cathars, a Christian sect regarded as heretical, primarily located in the Languedoc region of southern France. Unlike the Crusades in the Holy Land, this campaign resulted in widespread destruction within Christendom itself. It led to the seizure of vast tracts of land by the French crown and had devastating impacts on the local population. This internal crusade shows how the concept of holy war could be directed against other Christians who diverged from the papal line. Financial and logistical innovation was crucial to the success of various crusades. The complexity of transporting and supplying large armies over long distances led to the development of more advanced forms of financial instruments. The Templars in particular innovated in the realm of banking by issuing letters of credit to crusaders. A knight could deposit money in one Templar chapter house in Europe and withdraw it in the Holy Land. This proto-banking system not only safeguarded the crusaders' funds from theft, but also helped in the efficient allocation of resources. These financial innovations played a vital role in the later development of modern banking systems. Religion and politics were deeply intertwined during the Crusades, as exemplified by the investiture controversy. This conflict between the papacy and Holy Roman emperors during the early 12th century centered on who held the authority to appoint bishops. The resolution of this struggle had a direct impact on the Crusades, as the papacy emerged with greater authority to call for and organize these military endeavors. The increased papal influence enabled more centralized and coordinated crusading efforts. This episode reveals how the Crusades were not just religious wars, but also arenas for the struggle over ecclesiastical and secular power. The Crusades also fostered the intellectual concept of a just war, which would go on to influence Western legal and moral thought. The idea of justified warfare was rooted in earlier Christian theology, but was given new life during the Crusades as popes and theologians sought to justify the use of violence for religious ends. Theologians like Saint Bernard of Clairvaux argued that crusades were acts of Christian charity aimed at protecting pilgrims and reclaiming holy sites. This conceptual framework provided moral and ethical guidelines for engaging in warfare, influencing later debates on the morality of war and peace within Christian tradition. In addition to military and economic consequences, the Crusades had profound impacts on the European imagination and literature. The tales of heroic knights, epic battles, and exotic lands sparked a surge in chivalric romance literature during the High Middle Ages. Works like The Song of Roland and The Chronicle of the Crusades by Jean de Joinville became immensely popular, blending historical events with legendary exploits. This genre not only entertained, but also served to glorify the crusading ideals of bravery, loyalty, and piety. The legacy of these stories persisted for centuries, influencing Western literature and shaping perceptions of heroism and adventure. The Children's Crusade is one of the most peculiar events associated with the Crusades. Taking place in the year 1212, it was led by a French shepherd boy named Stephen. Thousands of young peasants believed they had been divinely chosen to peacefully convert Muslims in the Holy Land. They trekked across Europe facing enormous hardships. Tragically, most of the children either died from starvation or were sold into slavery, None of them reached the Holy Land, revealing the sheer futility and tragedy of this so-called crusade. The Fourth Crusade, which commenced in 1202, never actually reached the Holy Land. Instead, it deviated from its initial religious goal and ended up sacking Constantinople in 1204. This event caused a significant rift between the Catholic and Orthodox churches. The Crusaders pillaged and looted the city, taking countless treasures, destroying invaluable artifacts, and causing immense cultural damage. This betrayal had lasting ramifications, fostering deep-seated animosity between the two branches of Christianity. The Siege of Antioch, which lasted from October of 1097 to June of 1098, was a pivotal moment in the First Crusade. The city was crucial for controlling the route to Jerusalem. The siege saw both brutal fighting and cunning tactics. At one point, the Crusaders faced starvation and morale was low. However, divine inspiration allegedly led them to discover a hidden gate. They stormed the city and took control. Shortly after, a Muslim army besieged them inside Antioch. Though desperate, the Crusaders were said to have found the Holy Lance, rumored to be the spear that pierced Christ's side. This discovery reinvigorated their spirits, and they managed to break the siege and secure a key victory. The German Emperor Frederick Barbarossa played a crucial role in the Third Crusade. Embarking on the journey in the year 1189, he led a massive force from Germany towards the Holy Land. However, his campaign came to a tragic and abrupt end when he drowned in the Salif River in modern-day Turkey on June 10, 1190. His death threw the German contingent into disarray. Many of his soldiers either returned home or joined other Crusader contingents. Barbarossa's untimely demise was a severe blow to the Crusader forces and underscored the perils of such ambitious undertakings. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, was a decisive moment for the Crusader states in the Holy Land. Led by the Muslim leader Saladin, the Muslim forces inflicted a crushing defeat on the Crusaders near the Horns of Hattin. The Christian forces, suffering from intense heat and lack of water, were decimated. King Guy of Jerusalem and many other nobles were captured. This battle effectively shattered the military strength of the Crusader states and led to Saladin's subsequent capture of Jerusalem later that same year. The First Crusade prompted the establishment of several Crusader states in the Holy Land. These states included the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Principality of Antioch, the County of Edessa, and the County of Tripoli. They functioned as fortified enclaves amidst a predominantly Muslim region. Their existence relied heavily on support from Europe as well as intricate alliances with local Muslim leaders. Though often besieged and under threat, these states lasted for varying durations. The County of Edessa fell in 1144, triggering the Second Crusade, while the Kingdom of Jerusalem was finally lost in 1291. The Siege of Acre was a significant event during the Third Crusade. Starting in 1189, the siege lasted nearly 2 years and showcased the strategic importance of the city. Acre served as a vital port and gateway for supplies and reinforcements. Both Richard the Lionheart of England and Philip II of France played key roles in the siege. After intense fighting, the city fell in 1191. The surrender terms were harsh, with many Muslim prisoners executed upon the failure to meet ransom demands. Acre remained a crucial stronghold until its fall in 1291, marking the end of the Crusader states. The Knights Templar were a monastic military order founded in 1118. They became one of the most renowned and powerful orders involved in the Crusades, known for their distinctive white mantles adorned with red crosses. They played a significant role in protecting Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. The Templars established various fortifications and banking systems, amassing substantial wealth and influence. However, their prosperity also led to their downfall. By 1307, under the orders of King Philip IV for France and Pope Clement IV, the Templars were arrested, tried, and largely disbanded, accused of heresy and other crimes. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux was a pivotal figure in promoting the Second Crusade. In 1146, he passionately preached the need for another crusade in response to the fall of the County of Edessa. His eloquent sermons and charismatic presence rallied many European nobles to the cause, including King Louis VII of France and Emperor Conrad III of Germany. However, despite considerable enthusiasm, the campaign turned into a disaster. The Crusaders faced significant military defeats, logistical challenges, and internal discord. Saint Bernard later expressed regret over the failure, but his influence underscored the critical role of religious leaders in shaping Crusader movements. The Albigensian Crusade, unlike the ones directed towards the Holy Land, targeted heretics within Europe itself. Launched in 1209, it aimed to eradicate the Cathar heresy in southern France. The Cathars followed a dualistic belief system deemed heretical by the Catholic Church, Over 2 decades, forces led by northern French nobles waged brutal campaigns against the Cathar strongholds. The siege of Béziers in 1209 showcased the merciless nature of this crusade. When asked how to distinguish between Catholics and Cathars, the response allegedly was, "Kill them all. God will know his own." This crusade significantly expanded the power of the French crown in the region. The Reconquista was a protracted series of campaigns extending over several centuries rather than a singular crusade. Its aim was to reclaim the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. Beginning in the early 8th century, it culminated in 1492 with the fall of Granada, the last Muslim stronghold. Crusading rhetoric and papal support often framed these campaigns. Knights and nobles from across Europe frequently joined the Reconquista, drawn by both religious zeal and the promise of land. The successful Reconquista significantly altered the religious, cultural, and political landscape of Spain and Portugal, marking the end of Muslim rule in Western Europe. The concept of a crusade wasn't limited to the Holy Land. It frequently took form in various regional and political contexts. The Northern Crusades, for instance, were military campaigns initiated in the 12th and 13th centuries against the pagan tribes in the Baltic region. Led mainly by the Teutonic Knights and other Christian military orders, these crusades aimed to convert the indigenous populations to Christianity. The campaigns were often brutal and resulted in significant cultural and demographic changes. The Lithuanians, Prussians, and Livonians, among others, gradually succumbed to Christian rule, fundamentally altering the religious and political dynamics of the region. The role of Muslim women during the Crusades is often overlooked but was quite significant. Women frequently took on essential roles such as caretakers, supporters, and even participants in combat. One notable example is the legendary figure of Sibylla of Jerusalem, who played a critical role during the siege of Jerusalem in 1187. On the Muslim side, women also took active roles in defending their cities. In the siege of Acre, Muslim women are recorded to have helped carry water and supplies to the trenches, and some even fought against the Crusaders. Women's contributions, though often marginalized in historical narratives, were crucial to the war efforts on both sides. Trade and economic interests were a lesser-known yet crucial aspect of the Crusades. The Italian city-states of Venice, Genoa, and Pisa in particular saw the Crusades as an opportunity to expand their economic influence and trading networks. These cities provided naval support and transportation for Crusaders, often in exchange for commercial privileges in the conquered territories. The Fourth Crusade's infamous diversion to Constantinople had significant economic underpinnings, with Venetian merchants playing a crucial role. The Crusades thus not only shaped the religious and political landscape, but also profoundly affected the economic practices and commercial networks of medieval Europe. The role of Byzantium in the Crusades was complex and multifaceted. The Byzantine Empire initially sought Western military aid against the encroaching Seljuk Turks, which helped spark the First Crusade. However, the relationship between the Byzantines and the Crusaders was fraught with tension and mistrust. Byzantium's strategic interests often clashed with those of the Crusader states. The Byzantine Emperor Emanuele Komnenos attempted to reassert control over the Crusader states and faced multiple military conflicts with them. The Fourth Crusade, culminating in the sack of Constantinople, ultimately marked the nadir of Byzantine Crusader relations and severely weakened the Byzantine Empire. The Crusades had profound ramifications on European medical practices. Interacting with more advanced Muslim medical knowledge significantly influenced European medicine. Crusaders encountered hospitals and medical facilities in the Middle East that were far more advanced than those in Europe. Islamic medicine, which utilized a range of herbs, surgical techniques, and sanitary measures, provided valuable insights for returning Crusaders. Treatises from Muslim scholars like Avicenna and Al-Razi were translated into Latin, enriching European medical knowledge. The exposure to these medical practices helped spur a gradual evolution in European medicine, emphasizing cleaner surgical procedures and diverse medicinal preparations. The Crusader castles and fortifications constructed in the Holy Land showcase remarkable medieval military architecture. These castles, such as Crac des Chevaliers in modern-day Syria and Kerak Castle in Jordan, were designed to be impregnable strongholds. They incorporated complex defensive features, including concentric walls, moats, and fortified towers. Built to withstand lengthy sieges, they provided both a military foothold and a symbol of Crusader presence. The architectural innovations and strategic placements of these fortifications reflect the Crusaders' adaptation to local geography and warfare. Some of these castles remain well preserved today, offering valuable insights into medieval military engineering. Conversos, Jews who converted to Christianity during the time of the Crusades, often faced a precarious existence. Though they outwardly adopted Christian practices, many secretly adhered to their Jewish faith. Their dual identity made them targets for suspicion and persecution. The social and religious upheavals brought about by the Crusades heightened tensions, and converts were frequently accused of insincerity or heresy. This climate of distrust extended into the Spanish Inquisition in the 15th century, where conversos were scrutinized and many were executed. The Crusades thus inadvertently exacerbated anxieties about religious conformity and added to the persecution faced by Jewish communities. The Children's Crusade is one of the most peculiar events associated with the Crusades. Taking place in the year 1212, it was led by a French shepherd boy named Stephen. Thousands of young peasants believed they had been divinely chosen to peacefully convert Muslims in the Holy Land. They trekked across Europe facing enormous hardships. Tragically, most of the children either died from starvation or were sold into slavery. None of them reached the Holy Land, revealing the sheer futility and tragedy of this so-called crusade. The spread of religious military orders was a significant consequence of the Crusades. Apart from the famous Knights Templar and Hospitaller, several other orders were established, such as the Teutonic Knights, who played a prominent role in the Baltic Crusades. These orders combined religious motivations with martial prowess, offering a way of life that appealed to many European nobles. They built extensive networks of castles, churches, and hospitals across Europe and the Holy Land. Over time, these orders amassed significant wealth and political influence. However, their power also made them targets, as seen in the eventual suppression of the Templars in the early 14th century. The role of commoners in the Crusades is a lesser-known but crucial aspect of these campaigns. While much of the focus often rests on noble leaders and knights, thousands of ordinary people participated in the Crusades. Many were motivated by fervent religious zeal, responding to papal calls with the belief that they would earn salvation. This grassroots involvement made the Crusades a broader social movement, cutting across class divides. However, the lack of training and resources among peasant crusaders often led to hardships and high mortality rates. Their participation underscores the widespread and multifaceted impact of the crusading movement on medieval society. The Treaty of Jaffa, signed in 1192, was a significant but often overlooked outcome of the Third Crusade. After several intense military engagements, Richard the Lionheart and Saladin agreed to a truce that allowed Christian pilgrims to visit holy sites in Jerusalem, even though the city remained under Muslim control. This treaty marked a pragmatic resolution to the conflict, at least temporarily, and demonstrated that diplomacy could achieve what prolonged warfare could not. The mutual respect between Richard and Saladin played a crucial role in reaching this agreement, highlighting the complex interactions between opposing leaders during the Crusades. The preaching of the First Crusade by Pope Urban II at the Council of Clermont in 1095 had far-reaching consequences. Aside from initiating the military campaign, his call to arms influenced the language and rhetoric of future crusades. Urban II framed the crusade as a penitential pilgrimage, promising spiritual rewards and absolution of sins for those who participated. This rhetoric was powerful and persuasive, tapping into deeply held religious beliefs and motivating thousands to take up the cross. The concept of a holy war sanctioned by the Church became a recurring theme, affecting both Christian-Muslim relations and internal Christian conflicts for centuries. The role of the papacy in the Crusades went beyond mere spiritual leadership. Successive popes used the Crusades to assert and expand their influence over European monarchs and territories. The granting of indulgences for crusaders served to enhance papal authority, as it centralized spiritual power in the hands of the Pope. Additionally, the Crusades provided opportunities for the papacy to direct military campaigns against perceived internal enemies, such as heretics and rebellious nobles. The Crusades thus functioned as a tool for the papacy to consolidate power, both in religious and temporal terms, shaping the political landscape of medieval Europe. The role of military technology in the Crusades is another crucial yet often overlooked aspect. Crusaders and Muslim forces alike employed a range of advanced siege weapons, including trebuchets, mangonels, and battering rams. The use of Greek fire by the Byzantines added a fearsome dimension to naval battles. These technological innovations had a significant impact on the outcomes of various sieges and battles, contributing to the evolving art of warfare. The exchange of military technologies between East and West during the Crusades had long-lasting effects, influencing European military practices and the development of more sophisticated weaponry and fortification techniques. The capture of Jerusalem during the First Crusade in 1099 was a momentous event that reverberated throughout Christendom and the Muslim world. After a grueling siege, the Crusaders finally breached the city's defenses on July 15th. The subsequent massacre of the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants shocked even contemporary chroniclers. This brutal victory became a rallying point for future crusades and a potent symbol of Christian triumph. The capture and subsequent loss of Jerusalem remained a central focus of crusading efforts for centuries, highlighting the city's immense religious and symbolic significance for multiple faiths. The role of maritime operations in the Crusades was pivotal yet often underappreciated. Control of the seas was essential for transporting troops, supplies, and reinforcements to the Holy Land. The Italian maritime republics, particularly Venice, Genoa, and Pisa, played key roles in this regard. Their fleets provided crucial logistical support and enabled the movement of large armies across vast distances. Naval battles and blockades also became integral parts of crusading warfare. The ability to project power across the Mediterranean had lasting implications, not just for the Crusades, but for European maritime dominance in subsequent centuries. The so-called Shepherd's Crusade, which occurred in the year 1320, is one of the more obscure and tragic offshoots of the crusading movement. Aimed to support the Reconquista in Spain and revive the crusading zeal in Europe, it was largely composed of peasants and shepherds inspired by charismatic preachers. However, lacking proper organization and military training, the movement quickly descended into chaos. Participants vented their frustrations on local Jewish communities, leading to widespread violence and persecution. The Shepherd's Crusade ended in failure, but it highlighted the social unrest and religious fervor that continued to simmer in medieval Europe. The constitutional impact of the Crusades on European monarchies is another key but lesser-known consequence. Funding and organizing crusading expeditions required significant resources, often leading to the imposition of new taxes and the accumulation of debts. Monarchs like Richard the Lionheart of England and Louis son of France had to negotiate with their barons and subjects, resulting in various legal and financial reforms. These developments laid the groundwork for more centralized and bureaucratic state structures. The necessity of raising large armies and funds contributed to the evolving relationship between monarchs and their subjects. Influencing the political landscape of medieval Europe, the sieges and campaigns of the Crusades brought about significant developments in European military engineering. The necessity to breach formidable fortifications led to innovations in siegecraft, including more effective siege towers, tunneling techniques, and the use of counterweight trebuchets. European engineers and soldiers learned from their Muslim and Byzantine counterparts, adopting and refining these techniques. These advancements were later applied in Europe's own internal conflicts, contributing to the evolution of medieval and early modern warfare. The cross-pollination of military knowledge during the Crusades thus played a vital role in the technological progression of European military engineering. The Crusades had lasting cultural impacts, including the transfer of knowledge and technology between East and West. European crusaders encountered advanced Muslim scholarship in fields like astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. Manuscripts and scientific works by scholars such as Avicenna and Al-Khwarizmi were translated into Latin, enriching European intellectual traditions. This cultural exchange extended to agricultural practices, architectural styles, and even culinary tastes. The introduction of new crops and techniques such as irrigation methods from the Muslim world had a long-term impact on European agriculture. The Crusades thus served as a conduit for cultural and technological exchange, with enduring legacies. The role of pilgrimage in the crusading movement was a foundational yet often overlooked aspect. The concept of a crusade originally fused the idea of pilgrimage with that of holy war. Pope Urban II's call for the First Crusade emphasized the spiritual benefits of participating in this armed pilgrimage. Crusaders often took vows and wore distinctive crosses on their garments, signifying their dual roles as pilgrims and warriors. The fusion of these two concepts provided a powerful motivation for many participants. This spiritual dimension distinguished the Crusades from other military campaigns, emphasizing their unique character in medieval history. The experiences of local Christian communities in the Holy Land during the Crusades were complex and multifaceted. Eastern Christians, including Greek Orthodox, Armenian, and Syriac communities, often found themselves caught between the Crusaders and the Muslim rulers. While some saw the Crusaders as liberators from Muslim rule, others experienced tensions and conflicts due to religious and cultural differences. The Crusader states established Latin Christian institutions, sometimes displacing long-established Eastern Christian traditions. This dynamic created a nuanced and often strained relationship between different Christian denominations, affecting the religious landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean for centuries. Of the lesser-known Crusades was the Children's Crusade in 1212, which saw thousands of young children set out for the Holy Land. The motivations behind this event are unclear, often attributed to a mix of religious fervor and a belief that Christian innocence could succeed where armies had failed. Unfortunately, very few survivors returned. Many of the children were sold into slavery, perished from hunger and exposure, or were lost at sea. This tragic venture underscores the profound desperation and religious zeal that enveloped Europe during the Crusades. A notable figure during the Crusades was Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful and influential women of the Middle Ages. Eleanor accompanied her husband, King Louis VII of France, on the Second Crusade. Her presence was controversial due to the significant influence she wielded. Eleanor's experience during the Crusade was mixed. It did, however, play a role in the eventual annulment of her marriage to Louis. She later married Henry II of England, further extending her influence in European politics. The Fourth Crusade, occurring in the early 13th century, notably deviated from its original intent. Rather than reaching the Holy Land, Crusaders sacked the Christian city of Constantinople in 1204. This event was largely driven by economic and political factors rather than purely religious motivations. The sacking of Constantinople is often cited as a major cause of the deepened schism between Eastern Orthodox and Western Catholic Christianity, and it weakened the Byzantine Empire significantly. Saladin, the Muslim leader who recaptured Jerusalem in 1187, was highly respected even by his adversaries. Known for his chivalry and honor, Saladin exhibited generosity toward his defeated enemies. For example, after the Battle of Hattin, he provided medical care to King Guy of Lusignan and other Christian captives. Saladin's humane treatment of his foes and strategic prowess solidified his legacy, making him a storied figure in both Middle Eastern and Western historical narratives. The origins of the Teutonic Knights lie in the Third Crusade and the Siege of Acre, initially founded as a hospital brotherhood to aid sick and wounded pilgrims. Their role expanded into military efforts against Muslim forces. By the early 13th century, the Teutonic Knights had become a significant military and political force, shifting their focus to the Baltic region. They played a crucial role in the German eastward expansion, establishing a monastic state and converting the pagan Prussians to Christianity through force. The concept of crusader states, also known as Outbremer, arose following the First Crusade. These states included the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Principality of Antioch, the County of Tripoli, and the County of Edessa. They were established to consolidate and defend the territorial gains of the Crusaders in the Levant. Governed by European noble families and heavily fortified, these states were perennially insecure due to their isolation and the need for continuous military support from Europe to fend off surrounding Muslim forces. The Battle of Hattin in 1187 was a pivotal event during the Crusades. The Christian forces, led by Guy of Lusignan, were decisively defeated by Saladin. This battle led directly to the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin's forces later that year, substantially weakening the Christian position in the Holy Land. The loss at Hattin underscored the tactical mistakes of the Crusader leadership, such as their decision to march across arid land without adequate water supplies, which left them vulnerable to Saladin's more mobile and better prepared forces. One of the motivating factors behind the First Crusade was Pope Urban II's promise of remission of sins for those who took up the cross. At the Council of Clermont in 1095, he called for a holy war to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim control. Urban II's sermon galvanized a wide range of people, from knights to peasants, and led to a mass mobilization across Europe. This spiritual motivation, promising eternal reward, was unprecedented and succeeded in generating a massive and varied force marching toward the Holy Land. An intriguing but often overlooked aspect of the Crusades was the role of the medieval assassins, a secretive and militant branch of Shia Islam. The assassins, based in the fortress of Alamut in Persia and in Syria, played an active role during the Crusades by eliminating key figures on both sides. Their use of targeted killings, often carried out by young men willing to sacrifice their lives, instilled fear across the region. The assassins' interactions with both Crusader and Muslim leaders add another complex layer to the geopolitical struggles of the time. Roger II of Sicily, while not participating directly in the Crusades, played a crucial role in the Mediterranean politics of the 12th century. He looked to create a kingdom that was a nexus between the Latin West and the Islamic world. Roger's court in Palermo became a melting pot of cultures, attracting scholars, artists, and scientists from across the Mediterranean. By fostering this environment, he indirectly influenced the Crusader states, showing a different model of Christian-Muslim coexistence based on mutual respect and cultural exchange. The role of hospitals and medical care during the Crusades was significantly advanced by the Knights Hospitaller. Initially founded to provide care for sick, poor, and injured pilgrims in Jerusalem, the order later took on military functions. The Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, the order's main medical facility, became renowned for its advanced medical practices and care standards. The Hospitallers' dual role as both caregivers and warriors illustrated the complexities and dualities within the crusading ethos, where piety and violence often intersected. Richard the Lionheart, one of the most famous Crusader kings, spent more time on crusade than in his own Kingdom of England. His campaigns during the Third Crusade are legendary, particularly his rivalry with Saladin. Richard's military acumen was evident during the Battle of Arsuf in 1191, where he personally led charges that broke Saladin's forces. Despite his military successes, Richard could not recapture Jerusalem. His exploits, though, cemented his reputation as the quintessential chivalric knight, celebrated in both history and folklore. The People's Crusade, a precursor to the First Crusade, was led by the charismatic preacher Peter the Hermit in 1096. Unlike the organized military expeditions that followed, the People's Crusade mainly comprised poorly armed peasants and minor nobles. Driven by fervent religious zeal but lacking discipline, they faced numerous challenges. The journey was marked by widespread violence, including anti-Semitic attacks in Central Europe. Once they reached Asia Minor, they were quickly decimated by Turkish forces, demonstrating the perils of uncoordinated mass movements in the volatile Crusader era. The Council of Clermont in 1095 was a pivotal moment for the Crusades, as it marked the formal call to arms by Pope Urban II. His speech, advocating for the liberation of Jerusalem and offering indulgences to participants, resonated deeply across all social strata of medieval Europe. While the specific words of the speech vary in different chroniclers' accounts, its impact was unequivocal. It triggered a fervor that mobilized tens of thousands to embark on what they perceived as a holy mission, fundamentally altering the course of medieval history. The Siege of Acre, lasting from 1189 to 1191, was one of the longest and most grueling sieges during the Crusades. Acre was a strategically vital port city, and its capture was essential for controlling access to the Holy Land. The siege saw the combined forces of several European monarchs, including Richard the Lionheart and Philip II of France, eventually breaching the city's defenses. The fall of Acre provided the Crusaders with a crucial foothold, but also highlighted the substantial logistical and military challenges they faced in sustaining their campaigns. One of the most enigmatic figures associated with the Crusades is Prester John, a legendary Christian king said to rule a fabulously wealthy and powerful kingdom in the East. Tales of Prester John's empire captivated the European imagination from the 12th to the 17th centuries. Many crusaders and explorers sought to find his kingdom, believing it could serve as a crucial ally against Muslim powers. Although the kingdom was never found, the legend of Prester John influenced the geopolitics and exploratory endeavors of medieval and Renaissance Europe. Pope Innocent III played a monumental role in shaping the direction and scope of the Crusades. His pontificate, from 1198 to 1216, encompassed both the Fourth and the Albigensian Crusades. Innocent's efforts extended beyond mere military campaigns. He aimed to reform the Church and strengthen papal supremacy. The Fourth Crusade's unintended assault on Constantinople and the brutal suppression of the Cathar heresy during the Albigensian Crusade highlight the complexities and, at times, contradictions inherent in Innocent's broader vision of religious and political dominance. The Albigensian Crusade, launched in 1209, targeted the Cathar heresy in southern France rather than the Muslim-controlled Holy Land. The Cathars espoused a dualistic belief system that the Catholic Church deemed heretical. Led by Simon de Montfort and sanctioned by Pope Innocent III, the crusade was marked by extreme brutality. The siege of Béziers in 1209, where thousands were massacred, became notorious for the reported command, "Kill them all, God will know his own." This crusade significantly altered the political and religious landscape of southern France. The Treaty of Ramla in 1192 was a notable diplomatic effort following the fierce battles of the Third Crusade. Negotiated between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, the treaty allowed for Christian pilgrims to access Jerusalem while leaving the city under Muslim control. This agreement demonstrated that even amidst prolonged and brutal conflict, avenues for negotiation and coexistence could be sought. The Treaty of Ramla provided a temporary respite in the hostilities and illustrated the mutual respect between two iconic leaders, each recognizing the need for a pragmatic approach to their prolonged struggle. The Crusader castles such as Cracades Chevaliers in modern-day Syria were architectural marvels of their time. These fortifications were designed to withstand prolonged sieges and assaults, incorporating advanced defensive features such as multiple layers of walls, arrow slits, and cleverly designed killing grounds. Crêt des Chevaliers, in particular, became a symbol of Crusader military architecture. The castle not only served as a formidable defense post, but also as a base for launching military operations. These castles underscore the strategic importance of fortifications in maintaining Crusader control over the contested territories. One fascinating but lesser-known episode during the Crusades is the interaction between Christians and Mongols. The Mongol Empire was expanding westward during the 13th century, and their interests occasionally intersected with those of the Crusaders. Some Christian leaders saw the Mongols as potential allies against Muslim powers. Envoys were exchanged, and tentative alliances were considered. However, the Mongols' religious pluralism and ruthless military tactics made true alliances elusive. These diplomatic efforts reveal the complex and often shifting alliances and enmities that characterized this tumultuous period. The Reconquista, though often considered separately, was deeply interwoven with the broader crusading movement. Beginning the early 8th century, it focused on reclaiming the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim control. By the 11th century, the spirit of the Crusades influenced the Reconquista, with papal support and indulgences granted to those who participated. The capture of Toledo in 1085 and the fall of Granada in 1492 bookend this prolonged effort. This confluence of regional and broader crusading efforts illustrates the pervasive nature of the crusading ethos across medieval Christendom. Frederick II's involvement in the Sixth Crusade is a unique case of achieving objectives through diplomacy rather than combat. Despite being excommunicated, Frederick II negotiated with Sultan al-Kamil of Egypt, securing a treaty in 1229 that returned Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Nazareth to Christian control. This peaceful expansion was unprecedented and highlighted Frederick's shrewd diplomatic skills. This crusade stands out as an example of using negotiation and mutual respect to achieve what military force had often failed to secure, albeit the gains were later relinquished. First Crusade, which began in 1096, was not a unified campaign led by a single charismatic leader. Instead, it comprised several different armies, often with competing interests and little coordination. People's motivations ranged from religious fervor to the promise of land and wealth. Despite these challenges, the disparate armies successfully captured Jerusalem in 1099. Capture involved a brutal massacre where thousands of its Muslim and Jewish inhabitants were killed, showcasing the intense violence that characterized many of the Crusader campaigns. One of the most remarkable figures of the Crusades was a woman named Eleanor of Aquitaine. She not only accompanied her husband, King Louis VII of France, on the Second Crusade, but also played a crucial diplomatic role. Eleanor's presence was significant because women were rarely seen on the battlefield, let alone in leadership roles. Her involvement underscores the diverse and often overlooked contributions of women during these military campaigns. Although the Second Crusade was ultimately unsuccessful, Eleanor's participation drew attention to the varied roles people played during this period. The Teutonic Knights, a German military order, initially formed to aid Christians on their pilgrimages to the Holy Land and to establish hospitals in Jerusalem, later shifted their focus to the Baltic region. They played a crucial role in the Northern Crusades, aimed at converting the pagan populations of Eastern Europe to Christianity. Their efforts were notable for their brutality and the establishment of so-called Crusader states in regions like Prussia and Livonia. This shift demonstrates how the scope of the Crusades extended far beyond the Holy Land, affecting regions across Europe. Not everyone in the medieval Christian world supported the Crusades. Figures like Saint Francis of Assisi, who founded the Franciscan order, opposed the violence and bloodshed. In 1219, during the Fifth Crusade, he famously traveled to Egypt to seek a peaceful resolution. He even met with Sultan al-Kamil in an attempt to negotiate peace. Although his efforts were ultimately unsuccessful, St. Francis's mission highlighted that within the Christian world, there were strong advocates for peace and dialogue, standing in stark contrast to the prevailing attitudes of the time. The Knights Templar, one of the most famous military orders of the Crusades, were established around 1119. Their primary mission was to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. The Templars became incredibly wealthy and powerful, amassing large estates and engaging in banking activities. Their secrecy and financial power eventually led to their downfall. In 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered their arrest, and many were executed. The surviving Templars went underground, their legacy shrouded in mystery and legends, including the famous tale of the Holy Grail. Saladin, the Muslim leader who recaptured Jerusalem in 1187, is often remembered for his chivalrous conduct. Unlike the First Crusade's capture of Jerusalem, Saladin allowed Christians to peacefully leave the city upon its surrender, avoiding a massacre. Despite being enemies, Saladin and Richard the Lionheart, the English king who led the Third Crusade, developed a mutual respect. Their interactions were marked by acts of chivalry, such as Saladin sending Richard gifts and medical assistance. This relationship underscored that even during brutal conflicts, there were moments of respect and humanity between adversaries. The Children's Crusade of 1213 is one of the more tragic and bizarre episodes of the Crusades. It was led by a French boy named Stephen of Cloyes and a German boy named Nicholas. Thousands of children set out to peacefully convert Muslims in the Holy Land. Lacking any real support or resources, many children either perished from hunger and exhaustion or were sold into slavery. While the Children's Crusade didn't achieve its noble goals, it highlights the powerful sway of religious fervor and the tragic consequences of misguided zeal during the crusading era. One aspect often overlooked about the Crusades is the role of Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos. The emperor, facing Turkish threats to his empire, appealed to Pope Urban II for help, leading to the First Crusade. However, while the Crusaders initially aimed to aid Byzantium, tensions soon arose. The Crusaders felt the Byzantines did not provide adequate support, while the Byzantines were wary of the Crusaders' intentions. These complex relationships illustrated how the Crusades were not simply Christians versus Muslims, but involved intricate political and cultural dynamics among Christian factions. The Fourth Crusade, which began in 1202, is infamous for its diversion from the original mission to recapture Jerusalem. Instead, the Crusaders ended up sacking the Christian city of Constantinople in 1204. This event severely weakened the Byzantine Empire and deepened the schism between the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. Driven by political and economic motivations rather than religious ones, this crusade illustrates how the goals of such campaigns could be manipulated, leading to outcomes far removed from their original intentions. While military actions primarily defined the Crusades, they also had a significant cultural and intellectual impact. The interactions between Muslim, Christian, and Jewish scholars during the Crusader period facilitated the transfer of knowledge, especially in fields like medicine, mathematics, and philosophy. European scholars gained access to Greek and Arabic texts, which helped spark the Renaissance. This cultural exchange underscores that the Crusades, while often brutal, also played a role in the broader intellectual and cultural development of Europe, illustrating the complex and multifaceted legacy of these events. The Crusades were not solely a matter of Western European involvement. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, established after the First Crusade, included a melting pot of cultures and religions. Native Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived alongside European settlers. While there were periods of intense conflict, there were also times of coexistence and cooperation. For example, Muslim and Christian doctors worked together in hospitals, and trade continued across religious lines. This complex social fabric showcases how life in the Crusader states was more nuanced than simply a clash of civilizations. The Albigensian Crusade, launched in 1209, was aimed at rooting out the Cathar heresy in southern France rather than recapturing the Holy Land. Pope Innocent III called for this crusade to eliminate what he saw as a dangerous heretical threat to the Roman Catholic Church. The Albigensian Crusade was notably brutal, resulting in the massacre of thousands of Cathars and the near total eradication of their beliefs. This crusade illustrates how the concept of holy wars extended beyond the Middle East to address religious dissent within Christendom itself. During the Crusades, hundreds of castles were built across the Holy Land and throughout Europe to act as strongholds and military bases. Among the most famous is Crc des Chevaliers in modern-day Syria, which served as a headquarters for the Knights Hospitaller. The castle, with its impressive fortifications, symbolized Crusader power and influence in the region. These castles were not just military structures. They were also administrative centers and symbols of feudal authority. Their construction demonstrates the logistical and engineering efforts that supported the crusading campaigns. The Reconquista, often viewed as the Spanish equivalent of the Crusades, aimed to reclaim the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. While it started before the First Crusade, the religious fervor and language of the Crusades significantly influenced it. This long-term effort, culminating in the fall of Granada in 1492, paralleled the aims of the Eastern Crusades in seeking to reclaim Christian lands. The Reconquista also had lasting impacts, leading to the establishment of powerful Spanish and Portuguese kingdoms and setting the stage for the Age of Exploration. One fascinating story from the Crusades involves Balian of Ibelin, a minor noble who played a crucial role during the siege of Jerusalem in 1187. After Saladin captured Jerusalem, Balian negotiated the safe departure of its Christian inhabitants. Allowed to leave the city to collect his family, Balian broke his promise to Saladin and stayed to organize Jerusalem's defense. Despite this, Saladin respected Balian's courage and allowed him to negotiate the city's surrender. This story highlights the complexities of honor and chivalry that sometimes emerged even amid relentless warfare. Not all crusades were met with enthusiasm by European monarchs. King Richard the Lionheart's brother, King John of England, faced significant opposition when Pope Innocent III called for another crusade. England was dealing with internal strife and the aftershocks of earlier crusades, leading many to question the value and viability of such campaigns. King John's reluctance and the resistance he faced illustrate that even within the Christian world, there were significant divisions and doubts about the purpose and efficacy of continuing these holy wars. One lesser-known Crusader state was the Principality of Antioch, established after the First Crusade in 1198. Unlike the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Antioch maintained a semi-independent status and was often embroiled in conflicts with neighboring Muslim states and internal power struggles. The principality served as a vital hub for trade and military operations in the region, demonstrating the Crusaders' efforts to establish and maintain political entities far from their homelands. Antioch's story shows the complexities and challenges of ruling and sustaining a Crusader state in a hostile environment. While many view the Crusades primarily through the lens of Christian and Muslim interactions, Jewish communities often found themselves caught in the crossfire. During the First Crusade in particular, Crusaders attacked Jewish communities in the Rhineland as they made their way to the Holy Land. These assaults were fueled by religious zeal and the mistaken belief that Jews were enemies of Christianity. Thousands of Jews were killed, and entire communities were destroyed. These attacks reflect the broader religious intolerance and violence that permeated the period, affecting more than just the primary combatants. The role of Italian city-states, particularly Venice and Genoa, was crucial in the crusading efforts. These maritime republics provided essential naval support, transportation, and supplies for the Crusaders. In return, they gained lucrative trade concessions and established colonies and trading posts in the eastern Mediterranean. Venice's involvement in the Fourth Crusade, which led to the sack of Constantinople, was driven more by commercial interests than religious zeal. The participation of these city-states underscores the economic dimensions of the Crusades, highlighting how commercial interests could shape and even divert the course of military campaigns. The Crusades also saw innovations in military technology and tactics. One significant development was the use of the counterweight trebuchet, a powerful siege engine that could hurl massive stones over great distances. The Muslims and Christians both used these formidable machines to devastating effect in sieges throughout the crusading period. The adoption and improvement of such technology were critical in the success or failure of many battles and sieges. These innovations reflect how the Crusades served as a crucible for